Hello, friends. Today I want to talk about getting your mind right. You've heard this term a lot, getting your mind right. How do you get your mind right? And I think it's actually the inverse of what I think a lot of us try to do. First, let's talk about what's the wrong mind, right? Getting your mind wrong. The biggest thing that I think gets the mind wrong is words and talk. I think words can really fuck you up. They can really put you on a bender. I think in particular in this age of bodybuilding, I started very long ago, let's say like 15 years ago. It was black and I got my information from guys like Dr. Lane Norton, Alberto Nunez, Father Flex, those guys on in black and white words I would read in a form. Now, I'm not saying that black and white words are better than the way that we get information today, but it's a lot harder to type words. You got to really be precise and concise versus now you have video and I mean, you just get more words per second than you did with reading black and white text. And I think those words can sort of get in the mind and really scramble you up and get your mind wrong, right? I think a lot of us can get in a state of wrong-mindedness. So to get our mind right, I think what we have to do is sort of get it back to its natural state. And okay, think about it like this. Think about back to when you were a kid. Do you remember like your earliest memory, positive memory, let's say? Think about to that memory. Really take a second. Think about that memory and kind of hold on to it and cherish it. Now, do you remember what you were thinking during that memory? Think about the memory. Think about it. Cherish it. Where were you at? What did it smell like? What did it feel like? How did it, you know what I mean? Just think about that young, youthful, positive memory you had. What were you thinking at the time? In your head, in your mind, what was in your head? You probably can't remember what you were thinking. You were so young that I don't think you developed the strong, conscious capability to think like a madman yet. I think with age, a lot of us get our minds wrong because our brains get stronger over time. Our brains become smarter over time. I think we're more of a higher, stronger vessel of consciousness. And as the spirit or consciousness becomes stronger, we vision stronger, we dream stronger, we think stronger. Now, when I say get your mind right, I got to bring it back to this early memory and this thing. Think about those early memories you had as a kid. Think about all the things you did as a kid. So let's say even when you found, a lot of people found this in your youth like I did, bodybuilding and getting their mind right in bodybuilding. How'd you find it? Were you just working out with a friend and fucking around? Were you just chilling? One day you read a magazine or you saw a post and you just, without thought, you said, I like that. I want to do that. I want to try that. Your mind was empty. Your mind was right. Your mind was ready for your body to go do something. I think we can get into wrong mind. We can get our minds wrong, right? By clouding it with thinking, with clouding it with thoughts, with clouding it with information, with trying to over-process and overburden our head with what we're going to do. One thing that I really have to remember, and one thing that I really have to remind all my clients and everyone who wants to really succeed at this, and as I'm getting back to get to my best form, is to do this method well, to bodybuild, to lift, you have to get your mind right. And if you feel like you've been training and you've been dieting and it's been half-assed and it's been off and haven't been giving your best commitment and you've been lost and you're doing this and it's no longer about what you started it for, chances are you've got a heavy mind. You've got a lot of shit you think about up there. You got a lot of ideas. You got a lot of things you want to try. I would challenge you to empty the mind, to stop thinking for a second. This is a monkey's method. It's an ape method, right? You just go in there and just hit it fucking hard. That's really what this is about. Really and truly. That's really what this whole thing is about, right? And I think in the current age, I started with science-based lifting. Of science-based lifting in the current age, there's now wars. There's camps of wars. Mind you, these are all thought wars, right? This is wrong mind. If we want to go in there and get our mind right, you say, look, I'm going to go in there, do what works for me today. What works for me today may not work for me next year. But what works for me, I'm going to go in there. and do it and get my mind right. So if you feel that you've been in it and your mind's not right and you're doing little shit and your mind's full of, let's say, doubt or negativity, go back to that first memory, right? When it was just fucking good and empty, right? The brain is tricky. I think the brain is a strong organism. The brain takes over, I think, you can get these crazy thoughts in your head, and you can believe that bodybuilding and building muscle is a head first practice, right? Lots of talk, lots of noise, and it's just fucking not. Working in silence has worked for 100, 200,000 years of human history. It works. I'm not saying don't talk. I'm not saying don't use words. I'm not saying become reclusive and don't do anything like that. But if you want to get your mind right, you're going to have to shut the fuck up at some point. And I mean, all the shit talking you do to yourself, all the doubting that you do to yourself, all the not believing that you do in yourself, shut up the fuck, dude, shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. Your brain, in this takeover of thought that's plagued your life, right? That got your mind wrong. That hasn't gotten your mind right. Imagine if somehow your kidneys convince your body that I'm the most important thing, right? That's what your head is essentially. That's what your thoughts are essentially doing. They've somehow moved themselves up to priority number one, and that ain't how you get your mind right. How you get your mind right is by quieting it up, is by silence. There's this book I'm currently reading. I would like to share this with you. It's by this guy, A.D. Sertalange. Sertalange is like this friar, I guess you can call him, like Catholic kind of priest. I'm not Catholic. I don't know anything about Catholicism. I'm just learning a little bit through this guy. I know about like Thomas Aquinas and some small, really popular like geniuses that have given their life to the Catholic Church. But he's only the second one I know about, right? Usually when we think about a genius, we think of somebody in the sciences, Albert Einstein, yada, 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 Emerson, etc. But, you know, many places have geniuses. Ballet has geniuses, you know, and these people are people we don't know about. So anyways, for the topics that they write about in the church and whatever the work they do in the Catholic churches, one of the things that they do is intellectual work. If you've ever, any of you, ever seen a Bible, that's why no one has read the book. It is one of the hardest, it's one of the biggest intellectual overcoming, how do I say it? Coming overs that you can do. So, to be fair, in this book, and this is why I really want to compare it to what I'm saying about bodybuilding and getting your mind right. He talks about, to paraphrase what he's talking about, getting your mind right. And he basically talks about doing intellectual work. We can substitute what he's saying for the sake of the content to this video. We can take the word intellectual and put it in, do you want to do intellectual work? We can say, do you want to be a great bodybuilder, right? And so this is how he says to get your mind right, to do intellectual work. Do you want to do intellectual work? Begin by creating within you a zone of silence, a habit of recollection, a will to renunciation and detachment, which puts you entirely at the disposal of the work. Acquire that state of soul unburdened by desire and self-will, which is the state of grace of the intellectual worker. Without that, you will do nothing, at least nothing worthwhile. Okay, so I want to skinny this up and then bring it to the point that I'm trying to make about getting your mind right as a bodybuilder, right? If you want to do intellectual work, mind, mental, thinking work, okay? Begin by creating within you a zone of silence, peace, silence, quietness, stillness. If you're doing thinking work, intellectual work, and that requires a zone of silence, a state of peace, a state of quietness, to what degree do you think a physical act of lifting weights, of bodybuilding, wouldn't require the same? If you're doing actual intellectual work, work that's actually required for the mind to use words and to run a million words and be stimulated, he suggests that the first thing that you need to do, and these Catholics have done great work. I mean, they've done phenomenal work for what their topic is. Start by bringing peace within you. Start by bringing peace within. And from that zone of silence, right, comes things, right? He says, a habit of recollection. You can go, in my opinion, in the world of bodybuilding, read the newest, latest scientific papers. You can go and you can read the latest and greatest in machines and supplements and all those things. What I like about this phrase that he uses, a habit of recollection, is this. One thing that I've noticed that really makes a great bodybuilder is when they hear of something, when they read about something, they don't go and change the ship and let their mind rule it, right? That is not a zone of silence. If you hear that there's this new creatine, you don't get tricked into letting your mind say, whoa, and you think a fucking minute. That's not a right mind, dog. You got to get your mind right. Hear it. Hear the new news. Hear what's going on. Let it just be stored in your memory and keep the peace within. Keep working. Eventually what happens is that if you run into a bump or an obstacle or an issue as you're doing sort of the process for this bodybuilding, you'll say, hey, you remember that one thing that guy told me? Or do you remember that one thing that I read? I should look into that. This could be the solution for now. When you need something, and if you're in a state of silence, you will pull it up and have a habit of recollection for things you've heard in your past. Think about bodybuilding like this. Think about getting your mind right like this. You read, you take in, you absorb. All those things are okay to do. But ultimately, you've got to shut the fuck up and get the work, man. You got to shut up. I mean, I just want to strangle people how much. Shut up. And trust that the body, when it needs that bit of information, will say, hey, do you remember that one thing we read? Right? That's how the method works. The method doesn't work by throwing a million darts of everything you've read. That your mind's not right. Your mind's got you running after the newest and latest and greatest shit like crazy. That's the opposite of consistency, man. That's the opposite of consistency, dude. Next thing he talks about is a will to renunciation and detachment, which puts you entirely at the disposal of the work. Let go, right? This all comes within that state of peace. Just to say, I'm just going to go out there and fucking work like a dog. If this shit kills me, it kills me. I was looking at one of my old videos yesterday, just, trying to learn from my old self, because I'm realizing that on this bodybuilding journey, I'm not as good as that guy was. That guy was fucking good. And if I want to be as good as that guy, I got to learn from him. I got to learn from some of the previous things he said. And one thing that that guy did, that old bodybuilder did that I'm chasing, is that he put himself completely at the disposal of the work and he detached from things. I don't know what, you got to not know what movies are coming out. You got to kind of not be part of this world. You kind of got to leave the world and enter sort of your own reality, your own universe, and find some peace with that. You have to sort of detach, and it puts you completely at the disposal of the work. And so this can only come when your mind's not attached to, let's say, something up here. Wrong mind. Your mind's not right. Right? If you're trying to do this bodybuilder work, but you're still attached to, oh man, that Friday night, if you're still attached to, them Sunday brunches, if you're still attached to that, you got to literally detach from that and let that bring peace upon you, right? I'm not calling for isolation or to be a recluse, but if you actually want to be available at the disposal of the work, you have to detach from anything that may pop up in your mind that seems desirable. And all of these things stem from, right, being attached to something that's taken away from the work you're doing, stems from something popping up in your mind and you believing that, not being silent within the mind. All these things of trying to be consistent and be inconsistent by trying too many new things it comes from you not basically having that state of silence, that state of grace within you, where you can say, okay, I'm going to work. I ran into a problem. What tool do I need? You'd be, I've heard of these face pulls. Let me try this for my rear delt. Or I've heard of these squats. Let me try this for my glutes, right? In silence, it comes forth through you. Nothing great is going to come from you trying to think your way through. You trying to read your way through. That's like reading a book about an airplane, right? And say, I know how to fly an airplane. I've read every book there is to read on airplanes. Sure, your mind mentally does. But if you don't know what it feels like when that wing gets some lift, you don't know the goddamn thing. Your mind ain't right, right? You ain't flying today, son. So, okay, and I want to repeat just the last part. Acquire that state of the soul, unburdened by desire and self-will, which is the state of grace of the intellectual worker, the bodybuilder. Without that, you will do nothing, at least nothing worthwhile. We got to hear this, and I think we got to hear this message, and I think we have to swallow it, and don't do anything, right? We hear a message like this, and to get your mind right, there's nothing you have to do. Your mind is right. Your mind was born right. Think about that early memory, right? We got older, and as we develop and as we get smarter, we latch onto these thoughts. We latch onto conscious thought. We latch onto information thinking that it's going to be the answer. But my mind is now in a tizzy. My mind ain't right. My mind is just not fucking right. It's just in a opposite state of the state that it needs to be. So, okay. Get your mind right. And by getting your mind right, you don't need to do much. You just need to bring in the silence, bring in the peace. And in that peace, fight like a fucking champion. Get in the arena. Work like a fucking dog. Outwork everybody you meet, outwork them. Every opportunity, every chance you get, outwork them. Silently. Silently. And from that zone of silence, your body will say, this is the correct tool that I need to do. Let's pick that one. Let's try this one. Let's move this way. Let's move left, move right. You've got to be like this. You've got to have your blinders on. And you got to have your blinders on in your mind as well, too. To conclude, one thing I will say. You can't control what you think, right? You can't control what's going to pop up in your head and what's going to be lie as a temptation to throw you off. That's not what I'm trying to make you do. But one thing you can do is choose. And to keep our mind right and to get our mind right, in particular as bodybuilding, I think we can choose whatever is here for us in the present moment. If I have to jump a hurdle and it's just like pain, then fucking hit those squats and accept the pain and live silently and embrace that suck. If I have to be hungry, then live silently and just embrace that, dude. If you're being a fucking a little bitch about it and you're being scared, that's wrong mind. What are you thinking? What is you doing? Get your mind right, man. All right. If you like the video, please hit like the video. I appreciate everybody here. Leave a comment if you want to share anything. Also, I should also add, for anyone interested in coaching, I lately have been getting a good group of people getting stronger. Been doing a lot of strength programming. A lot of my bodybuilders have been coming up now. I've been coaching for well over 10 years now, and the type of athlete that I pick up always changes, but mostly the type of athlete that I've been having lately is the people who want to be their best. And that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I've been applying to myself and for everybody. So, okay, interested in anything from me, otherwise, do let me know. Thank you for listening. Get your fucking mind right, man.